If I compare my wife side by side to my clients, my wife is not as impressive as my clients. She's just the best fit for me. And I cherish that, and I have enough life experience to know what's out there to realize why that was a great choice. Everybody wants this fantastical vision of what they want for a future, which is to have 10 chemistry and 10 compatibility. It just doesn't exist. Hey, this is Evan Marquardt, dating coach for smart, strong, successful women, your personal trainer for love. Welcome back to the Love You podcast, where today we're going to be talking about the importance of attraction. Before we get into that, I was delighted to go and read some of your reviews of the podcast on Apple and Spotify. It's just heartwarming. I stumbled on EMK several moments ago, and he was interviewed on another podcast. I've been tuning in ever since. His advice is straightforward and includes examples from real life. He references sound research, studies, and thoughts from other experts. I love that he brings it back to his own happy marriage to remind us of why we're putting ourselves through this. This is what gets me up in the morning. So if you enjoy the Love You podcast, before we get into this episode, take a moment right now to share something positive on Apple, on Spotify, or share these episodes with your friends. Now, because I'm not just telling a story today, stories are always pretty easy to tell, but because I'm not telling a story, I have to refer to my notes. I have a bunch of bullet points of things that I want to hit to cover the idea of why attraction is important, which on its surface sounds kind of dumb. Like, of course, attraction is important. What are you talking about? That's like doing a podcast called Water is Wet. But I want to do this because it's such a big thing, and we struggle with not just whether attraction is important, but what is attraction, what's healthy, what's unhealthy, what's normal, where should I and should I not compromise? Am I attracted to things that are good for me or bad for me, etc.? So without further ado, I want to acknowledge attraction is important. You cannot have a successful relationship if there is not a baseline of attraction. So anytime you've ever heard me say something that seems to contradict that, I could assure you I'm not contradicting myself. If anything, the fact that every coach in the world, as far as I know, don't tell you about how important attraction is because it's the one thing that humans sort of instinctually know, is that attraction is important. What people like me tend to emphasize is compatibility. Compatibility is more important, the most important thing, because if you don't have compatibility, you just have attraction. You don't have a healthy relationship. You just have good sex. So attraction, important. You can't get into a relationship if you don't have it. And if you ever think that someone who gives dating advice is telling you, you should go your life without attraction and good sex, they're either a terrible coach or you're not really hearing what they have to say. And that is the second point. Nobody wants you to settle. Any person who's in the advice-giving business wants you to be happy. And so I've been doing this long enough to know that I could say 2 + 2 = 4, and someone is going to look cross-eyed at me and going to say, what the hell are you talking about? 2 + 2 = 5. And how dare you tell me that? All I know is that people are often read the wrong way on the internet, and you could be as crystal clear as you want, and people are still going to misread you. And so the distinction here, and if we were on the video version of this instead of the audio version of it, you don't get to see my wild gesticulations. But sometimes you're attracted to really toxic people. People are attracted to generally what's familiar. You do not have to be Freud to understand that if your father left at a young age, you are going to see men as this thing where you have to win their love over. It's not going to be terribly surprising if you gravitate towards other men who trigger those same abandonment issues, who never make you feel good enough, who never make you feel safe, who say they love you but act otherwise. And anytime anybody's ever talked about the concept of daddy issues, that's where it comes from, is if you have a father who is verbally abusive or distant or shut down or critical or left, that sets a template for your relationships with men that we often unconsciously carry out. Now, that's not every use case. That's not every woman in every situation. That's just a perfect example of how we could be attracted to something because it's familiar and not realize that Even if it's familiar, it's not healthy. And so it's one of the great ironies of being a coach for women who are yearning to have someone who loves them unconditionally and accept them and listen to them and validate them and respect them. And the second you meet a guy who is thoughtful and respectful and validating and a good listener, you're like, I'm not attracted to this guy. So you can see why this is extremely complicated, even though we could say something as dumb as attraction is important. Often what you're attracted to is not healthy. In fact, if you look back at your own life, I could almost promise you, when you look at some of your most dysfunctional relationships, and we've all had them, you were attracted to someone. The attraction was there, but the relationship itself was unsound, unsustainable, ultimately made you unhappy. So that's how we know attraction doesn't equal happiness. Attraction is just attraction, right? If I have 6 beers in the next hour, I will feel drunk. It's just a feeling, and it's a feeling that's going to go away, right? Attraction is a temporary high. It's not what sustains relationships. What sustains relationships are attachments. Doing something for someone, not because of attraction, but because you love them. It's closer to how a parent loves a child. I do loving things for you. And in long-term romantic relationships, it's not the butterflies that keep marriages going. It's doing loving things for people. It's sustaining that positive energy that a lot of people summon at the very beginning because of attraction. It's important to understand virtually every relationship. Yes, everybody's gone out with someone they're not attracted to. Some people exit quickly. Some people stay too long trying to talk themselves into it. We're not really talking about that because remember, we need to have a baseline of attraction. Attraction will get you into a relationship. It will not, in and of itself, sustain a relationship. If you go on Wikipedia and scroll down to the biological basis of love, and you can read the research of Helen Fisher, attraction, the way we describe attraction, the dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, pheromones, right? High highs, low lows, the things that we associate with being in love fades after 18 to 36 months. And so then what are you left with? Can't just be attraction. Let me just pause to say, none of this is just my opinion. This is all stuff that is freely available to you on the internet that I try to consolidate in a short podcast to make it digestible. But none of this is my opinion about how things should be. This is just kind of how things are. When I think of the people that I was the most attracted to in the entire world, none of them either liked me or liked me enough to want to continue to be with me. Out of the people I was the most attracted to for God knows what reason. Attraction, not a great predictor of your future, but an important baseline to have. Women often beat themselves up because they're not attracted to guys. Don't do that. It's not worth it. You don't have to talk yourself into attraction. You're not a bad person. It's normal to find plenty of people unattractive. There's a fabled OkCupid study that says that women find 80% of men to be in the lower 50th percentile, meaning that you're not going to find most people attractive. As long as there's a baseline of men that you do find attractive, we're in business. You don't need to find everybody attractive, and you can meet a perfectly nice guy on a date and determine, nope, not seeing it, not feeling it. Would have to have 17 beers to kiss this guy. Not my person. Next, you don't go out with a guy just because he's nice. You don't go out with a guy just because he has a good job. You don't go out with a guy just because you're lonely. You go out with a guy because you enjoy his company. When we talk about this in previous podcasts where there's a baseline of comfort and fun and attraction, all three of those on a first date to necessitate a second date. If you're missing attraction, it's a non-starter, right? And now you could stop agonizing about, well, I should give him a chance. I often choose the wrong guys. You don't have to talk yourself into dates. I promise you, there are enough attractive people that you don't have to talk yourself into dates. But I do, per what we talked about earlier, want you to take note when you are attracted to people who aren't nice to you and you are not attracted to people who are nice to you. That is a sign that, once again, you don't have to change your personality. You might have to change or at least open up to the possibility that any man in your life kind of has to be nice to you. And try it on for size instead of seeing it as a sign of his weakness that he's really excited about you. enjoy what it's like to have a guy who is consistent and kind and generous and thoughtful and follows through and lets you know how he feels about you, instead of the guy who leaves you guessing and makes you feel like crap. Right? That's the anxious attachment style. That's what it means to choose guys who always leave you guessing. Right? You associate love with anxiety. And you don't want to associate love with anxiety. Love is safe. That's why we always say safe, heard, and understood. It has to be safe. And the guy who calls and follows up the next day, when can I see you again? When can I see you again? And you could say, oh my God, he's like this eager puppy dog. Well, yeah, that's what you want in a husband, a guy who's really eager to please you. It's not a crime. So if you find yourself always turned off by guys who are nice and only turned on by guys who are elusive or selfish or jerks, that is a pivot point. That's something to consider. But you can't similarly talk yourself into being attracted to someone. I remember once upon a time, I went out with someone who I really, really liked a lot. We had electric conversations. She was so smart and she was so cool, and she was a lawyer and she liked sports and she had a dog and we had friends in common. And it was 3 dates that flew by, shut down the bar. At the end of each of those 3 dates, I did not want to kiss her, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out why. And I remember really beating myself up. Dude, what is wrong with you? What's wrong with you? You run around giving people dating advice, and here it's like you've been given God's gift. This is your kind of person who you could have amazing conversation and really respect, and you have a ton in common. And for God knows what reason, I couldn't summon it. All right. And if I wish I had the courage to cut it off after the first date, but I actually sunk 3 dates into it to the point that we kind of liked each other, and then I had to cut it loose, and I felt horrible about myself instead of just realizing what I realize now. That's okay. You can't talk yourself into being attracted to people. I found a wife I'm attracted to. She found a husband who presumably is attracted to her. We both have families. We're on the same age. Everybody landed on their feet. And this is where people struggle, because we always feel like, oh, all the guys I'm attracted to are terrible, and all the guys who are attracted to me, I'm not interested in. And remember, we're just looking for that lane, that 10% where there's attraction and comfort simultaneously. What does that mean? How do you apply the kind of ideas we're talking about today? And this is an important concept in Love U, and I could tell you about it. I have no trouble telling you anything that I tell you in my private coaching. The best way to implement it is to get coaching to hold you accountable to these ideas, because it's easy to listen and nod your head and wonder why your life isn't changing just by listening to a podcast. So here's what we do in Love U with everybody. Every guy you go on a first date with, if you can't summon a 6 in attraction, there is no second date. A 6 can grow into a 9 if he makes you laugh, if he's smart, if he treats you right, if you have a real connection, if he's good in bed. 6 goes to a 9, even a 10. Seen it happen a million times. A 3 can't turn into anything. So you don't have to ever go out with someone where there's not attraction on a first date. There's no such thing as a second date with someone you're not attracted to at all. The ultimate place that we're landing on attraction is that, and I've told this on previous podcasts, virtually no man I know has ever married the person that he's the most attracted to in the entire world. People figure this out on their own, but sometimes they need a little bit of nudging. So you're not holding out for the person who's the most attractive. You're not holding out for the tallest man you've ever dated, the richest man you've ever dated, the funniest man you've ever dated. You're holding out for the guy who loves you unconditionally, treats you well, and is solid in all of these categories, but he doesn't have to be the best in all these categories, because the best has not led you to a happy relationship. You're not comparing men side by side. If I compare my wife side by side to my clients, my wife is not as impressive as my clients. She's just the best fit for me. And I cherish that, and I have enough life experience to know what's out there to realize why that was a great choice. Everybody wants this fantastical vision of what they want for a future, which is to have 10 chemistry and 10 compatibility. It just doesn't exist. Nobody has it. Look at any friend you have. If they have 10 chemistry, oh, dude, 10 years into our marriage, we still go at it like every morning, every night. Like, okay, that is not. There's no way that couple gets along famously and has an easy relationship, because the thing that makes sex is some measure of friction, some measure of tension, right? The easier it is, the less friction and tension, less sparks to some degree. So we're just looking for a blend. We're looking for a balance. And the made-up number that I arrived at is 7 chemistry and 10 compatibility. If you were to hypothetically interview your happily married friends, maybe you should ask them, if you were to give your relationship a compatibility score, how easy is it? How well do you get along? And to give you a chemistry score, how hot are you for each other? It might surprise you what you discover. But I think the best couples land with 7 chemistry. They're attracted to each other. They please each other in bed. The sparks are not what they were in the first 6 months to a year, right? But it's still a pleasurable part of their life, right? And the reason that their relationship works, their marriage works, is because they complement each other. They divide and conquer. They have different duties. They have different complementary energies, and the whole flow works really well, like a good team in business, where this one does the admin and this one does the books and this one is the creative and this one is the leader, right? Marriage is part of a team, and the 10 compatibility is what determines how well that team functions. It's not whether all the individuals are impressive in their own right. So what I want you to do is take this away, right? Pay attention to who you've been attracted to. Pay attention to whether that's worked for you over the years. Pay attention to what successful relationships that you know look like and feel like. And figure out how you could take the knowledge from today's podcast and apply it to your real life relationships. If you could do that on your own, great. We never have to talk. If this all sounds really good and you're like, I get it, but I don't get it, go to evanmarckatz.com/now, but only if you're ready to transform your life and have a relationship with a man who loves you unconditionally and makes you feel safe, heard, and understood. If you're not ready for that, do not get on the phone with me. Both of our time is valuable. Only looking for women who are serious about change. My name is Evan Mark Katz. This is the Love You Podcast. I thank you so much for listening. Please give us a positive review on Apple, a positive review on Spotify. Share this with your friends. I don't know. I mean, I love this job. I really love talking to you. I love your feedback. I love your questions. I even love it when you push back and tell me things that I don't want to hear. So I thank you so much for listening, and I very much look forward to the next time we meet again. Take care. Bye-bye.